Hey everybody, Whitney LaBrie here, and guess what? We finally made it to episode 4 of Polter, where we are recreating the children's room from the movie Poltergeist. Today, it's all about the spooky. I'm talking clowns, I'm talking trees, and maybe a couple other few surprises. I don't know about you, but I am living for this room this month. It's time to get started. To begin, a lot of people asked me if I was going to build a closet. My original intention was not to build the closet and just have it as though the closet was implied. But then I really got to thinking about it and I decided, okay, let's go ahead and build a closet. But in order to do that, I had to extend out the room box. So the way I'm going to do that is just using foam board, the same material that the whole box is made out of. So I'll extend out the floor, and then I'm going to extend out the walls on each side, but I am going to bring them in at a little bit of an angle so that the closet can still be seen, but also the room can be seen. So I don't want it to be a straight on 90-degree angle wall there. I'm also only going to show the closet from the outside, so it won't be an opened door, but I do want to add lighting to the interior of it. So I will be using more foam board to create a back wall so we don't see the inside. Now I went ahead and I added my flooring, and I'm also going to go ahead and stain that. And lucky for you, you don't have to see any of that. Now let's add the door. So like I said, I'm not adding a actual opened door. So I have this facade door here, this interior door, and it is wooden. So I'm going to go ahead and use that for my door. I'm going to paint it white and also add trim around the edges. And once I have the exact spot that I want it in, I'll go ahead and glue it in place. Now, before I add the trim, what I'm going to do is just make some cuts around the door. I don't want to completely cut the door out, but I just want to have a couple little slits so that when I do light it from behind, the lighting will kind of show through a little bit more, so it will give more of an ominous feel. And then after all the slits are in place, I'll go ahead and add my white trim. But first, let's talk a little bit about the type of closet that I'm wanting to do, because now the room that I'm going to add these elements, I'm going to add all of the spooky elements. I'm going to be placing them from actually different scenes in the movie and different timelines. So for the closet scene that I'm going to be showing, it's actually the second time in the movie that the closet opens up and becomes a portal. So it's right after Robbie gets attacked by the clown, the closet begins to open up and it starts to put out these little tentacles, these slimy tentacles through the door. And that's what I want to create with this closet right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint this brighter orange around the door frame. And I'm making it almost look like little flames are coming out of the door, which is ultimately what it's going to kind of look like anyway. So I'll go ahead and put those around all of the door frame. And then once my paint is dry, I'm going to take my glue gun and I'm just going to go over all of those little orange flares. The glue gun is going to make them look like those kind of shiny ectoplasm kind of jellied look that we see in the movie. And once my hot glue is completely dried, I will then go over it with a couple other colors. I'm going to use a little bit of a brighter yellow. I'm going to use a milk chocolate brown to do a little bit of highlighting. And then once all of that is completely dry, I'm going to use a darker orange called pumpkin spice, how fitting for the holiday, to go around the tentacles again. Now you can see that the floor has also been stained and all of the tentacles are also coming out of the door. Now that everything is all dried and ready to be installed, one of the things I want to do prior to installing it is I want to add some black duct tape to the back area of the door. And this is just to help when I light it up, because I want just to keep the light from bleeding through the foam board. This way it will also force the light to go around the edges of the trim versus going up through the top and above the closet door. And now I've added a doorknob and now the closet is finished. And you can see here that I've glued it in, and the one thing that's really bothering me is just the, it looks like a big long crack where that blue tape is right now holding it together. That's probably gonna really bother me because I couldn't get it exactly how I wanted it. I'll work on that. I'll figure out a way to disguise that later. All right, let's move on to the haunted tree, the tree that poor Robbie, this poor boy, traumatized for the rest of his life, As we know, he is counting the time between thunder and lightning and more time that passes in between the farther away the storm is getting. And so we see him counting here, and then all of a sudden the tree comes to life and reaches in and grabs him. And it does look like two huge, large hands. In order to create that tree, I, of course, am going to have it come through just like my hand, except I want to create two giant branches that look like two big hands, right? So I'm going to use what I already have in my house ready to go, which is some pipe cleaners, some brown pipe cleaners. I'm just going to mold those together and twist and tie them, and that's going to be the base of my tree, basically. It doesn't really look that bad right now, just the way that it is. It would probably be much easier to maneuver than what I'm about to do with it. So you can see here it's kind of going through the wall, or going through the window area. The next step, what I don't show in the video, is I take some white glue, some of my ultimate white tacky glue, and I coat all the brown pipe cleaners, and I just let it fully dry. And that's because the material that I'm using, it's going to be easier for me to cover in clay if they're nice and sturdy. Otherwise, it's going to be like trying to put clay over caterpillars, which is basically what that's going to feel like. So now that my glue is all dry, I'm just taking my DOS clay and I'm going to start molding it around my pipe cleaners. Because I'm not doing huge amounts of clay, just doing thin layers, I'm going to be able to get away by using this pipe cleaner again. Otherwise, I would recommend using thick wire, maybe something that you would use for a doll, or even an old wire hanger that you could use, something that would be sturdy and strong. Now what I want to do, now that the clay is all over my pipe cleaners, I'm going to take this green floral wire here and I'm cutting it down. Because I don't know if you noticed, but when that tree comes flying through, it has tons of little branches all over it, and like it's all gnarled, and it almost looks like the tree has hair. There's so much of those little small branches everywhere. So I'm just going to cut all of this down, and while the clay is still very wet, I'm going to start sticking all of those throughout the entire tree. What I've done here to protect my Star Wars bedding is I've just put some black construction paper on the bed, and then I laid my big tree in on the bed, and I'm just gonna lay it there, and I've got it propped up a little bit, and I'm gonna let it dry. The next day, once it's dry, I'm gonna go ahead and paint it brown. One of the things too that I've decided is because I loved the room the way that it was so much already, I did make this where I can move that tree out. It's not connected, so I could just lift it out of the room box throughout the year if I don't want this big tree just hanging out on the bed like this. Just because I really did enjoy that little bed and the Star Wars bedding. But that's my preference. So once I have it all nice and painted brown, I now have a huge turd just laying in the room box. It's the most beautiful turd I've ever seen. All right, we're gonna have to do a little adding some other color to that. While the brown dries on my tree, I do want to add a broken glass window into the window box there. And I'm going to use my acetate sheets right here. You guys have seen me use this in many other projects. Sometimes I call them lucite sheets, but that really isn't accurate. Lucite is a much thicker plastic. It's harder to cut. But anyway, this is easy. You can just use these acetate sheets and cut them with scissors. So I'm cutting down one sheet. You can see here, it's hard to see because it's clear obviously, but I've cut out a big jagged center, and I'm going to go behind my tree and go ahead and I'm going to tape it in for now, and I'll glue it in a little while. I just want to make sure that I like where it is and how it looks. And because it's a little hard to see on camera, let me just put a piece of black construction paper in front of it so it's a little bit easier for us to see. And there you go. You can now see more of the jagged edges. Now the center of that, I'm going to cut that down, and we're going to add that into the room and onto the tree as though glass pieces, came in and then landed on the floor and on the bed and all around. So I'll put that aside for now though, because what I want to do now that my tree is a little bit dry is I'm going to add some black into it. I wouldn't say that completely made it look like less of a turd, but I think it definitely added a little bit more dimension. Now I need to add some curtains. Now here are the curtains. You can see them here in this photo. It was really hard to find fabric like this, but I just happened to come across this wallpaper, which is almost an exact match to the curtains. And I'm going to use this and cut it down and then fold it into an accordion like this. And I'm clamping the top there, and I've pulled out one side and kind of pushed it up a little bit. And the reason I did that is because I do want it to look like that when the tree came flying through that window, of course the wind and everything is kind of blowing those curtains lines up on the side. So I'll place that into my window box and glue that in place. And I'll do that to the other side also. And then at the top part of the curtain, really, there wasn't a huge amount of damage to the room when this tree came through. You can kind of see that the curtain at the very top did fall a little bit. So I actually just cut a chunk out of the paper to give it that same look. And I'll go ahead and glue that valance in too. The other thing that I noticed in the movie, which is kind of interesting, is that very little, if not any, of the toys fell off the window. Even the chair really didn't get knocked out of the way. And my guess is that the director knew that these toys were going to be worth something, and so he probably told the set designers, like, hey, make sure my toys don't get destroyed. So, which is great for me because I am going to be able to add those back into the windowsill area here. And then now I'll go ahead and add my little glass chunks around into the tree, onto the bed, and near the red chair. One of the things I will do, because you do see it happen in the movie, the Star Wars poster gets ripped down off of the wall and it lands folded right on Robbie's pillow. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then the 1988 Super Bowl poster does fall down also right behind the Darth Vader head. Now, of course, everything gets pulled out of the room into the closet after the tree pulls Robbie out of the room. And we're going to indicate that later, but I'm not going to do that for this room box. Certainly not after having made all these accessories and toys. All right, now what I want to do is just give a little ambiance in the window and behind the tree. So I'm going to cut out a little bit more foam board and paint it a very dark gray, and I'll be adding that in right behind the tree. Now I want to show you this super cool thing I bought. This is another little surprise. This is made by Evan Designs. It is a thunder and lightning kit. So it has this really cool speaker, and then it has 2 prongs that are the lightning, and then it has 2 switches, and it's all 9-volt battery operated. If you didn't want to use a battery, you could definitely adapt this. So let me give you a little sample of it right now. And then you can see it here with the closet lights also. All right, so let's talk about Robbie's clown. This scene certainly traumatized me as a kid, although luckily I did not grow up with any clown phobias. But let's start off with my little clown here. This clown I found in a lot. He's got this little green outfit on. He's missing a hand. But I did think when I looked at him that his face, and of course his hair being orange, I felt like this was a good place to start as far as modifying a clown for me to use in this Poltergeist room box. Now, the first thing I did was I took some of my polymer clay for dolls, and I did sculpt out a little clown hand, and I'll be using that to replace the broken one that he currently has. And then because he's so small, I really didn't have to go out and get fabric. So I have this blue ribbon here. I also have some silver. This white ribbon here is more of a mesh, so it's see-through, so I'm probably going to have to use a little bit of felt also. And then I did get a red and white stripe to use for the arms and legs. I also have these little gold beads, and of course, because we definitely need something to look like little bells around the neck, and also, of course, famously the hat. So first things first, I'm starting with that red and white ribbon, and I'm going to just cover his legs and his arms with that red and white ribbon, including fixing the arm there, the hand. So there you go. So then I took my blue ribbon and I made a little poncho for him, put that over his head, cut down the sides, and then I made a little felt pair of pants. Then I took that white mesh ribbon. I liked it because it had a little bit more of a shimmer, which is what we're seeing in the doll itself. And I went ahead and I tied it around his waist and legs to create more of that shimmery white mesh look that we see in the film. Then I took more of that white material and I tied it around the neck because he kind of has more of a look of a jester. For his legs and arms, I took some curling ribbon and I wrapped it around to give him some cuffs. And then I took some of my blue ribbon that I used for the body and I made a little hat out of it too. The clown does have a star on his stomach and then he has some stars on the hat. So I took my silver metal paint. I'm going to paint those on. And then I do have this tomato red color paint. And I thought I would go ahead and paint his hair because his hair is a little bit darker orange than this bright orange that we have here on the clown. You know, this ain't going to be some Clairol, but it'll work. I'm really leaving his face the way that it is. Aside from when Robbie gets pulled under the bed, really the clown always looks like a regular, normal, happy, smiling clown, which I think plays a big role in why it's actually so scary. So we're going to go ahead and place him in the room. But before I do that, the crack in the floor between the new addition is still bothering me. So I'm going to remedy that by taking some of the toys, some extra toys that I have, and adding a little tacky putty to the bottom of them, and then placing them in such a way that it both covers the crack in the floor, but it also looks like the toys are kind of being pulled up and in toward the closet. Also, a couple people did mention that I should add Carol Ann's doll into the room, the one that we see her carrying around and laying in the bed with. I do think that's a great idea. I did find this little blonde hair doll right here that I have, and so I'm going to place her in the bed. The other thing I need to do before the room is complete is I want to cover both of those sides where I added the new addition, and then I want to do a piece of trim on the bottom to kind of just complete the look of the room. So I'm going to use wallpaper that I had that I used for the curtains, and then a piece of trim for the bottom. And now that that's in place, let me go ahead and put in my little clown. Now I'm placing him on Carol Ann's side of the room because when the tree comes flying in and grabs Robbie, and when Carol Ann is actually being pulled into the closet along with all the other toys, the clown is actually sitting on the bed. And then we're pretty much done, you guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the room backs back into the dollhouse, and then let's take a look at what it looks like in the house and all put together. I have to tell you, this last 4 weeks has been an absolute whirlwind. I really don't know what I was thinking trying to do all of this in such a short amount of time. And so I just really hope that you liked how it turned out. I think there are definitely things that I would do differently if I recreated this. And a lot of that would really have to do with this last video. I would really love to redo the clown and really take the time to make another one, because I would love it if I had those really lanky arms and legs. I think that really lends to a lot of the spookiness of the clown. The tree, again, I would like to recreate the tree. Even so, using a better base than the pipe cleaners, I think it worked for what we did here. And of course I can remove it, but I really want it to be a little bit more gnarled and a little bit more sturdy. But those are my improvements. That, when we create, sometimes we're our own worst critic. But I really do hope that you enjoyed this series and you had a blast. I mean, I really did have a good time making this room, and I'm really excited about it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Love to hear from you. As always, give me a thumbs up, share the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe. I have some other really fun stuff that we'll be doing over the next couple months, and of course going into 2024. And if you're wondering what the next room is going to be in the 15-room dollhouse, I have been wanting to add a garage for some time. And so I think I'm going to build a garage in the top of the dollhouse on the left-hand side. And if you're asking yourself, Whitney, wait a minute, you're going to put a garage up in the attic? There's no street that leads to that. There's no road. But I have to just say one thing.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.